Hey everyone, welcome to the show, where we talk about the next generation of designers who are reshaping the way we build, think, and imagine architecture. Today's guest has walked a path that so many young designers are curious about, starting with a traditional architecture education and stepping into advanced computational design later, and finally, working in a global cutting edge studio currently. She studied at SPA Delhi, pursued her postgraduate studies at the AADRL, and continue to explore the space where logic meets intuition and design. It's my pleasure to welcome Jayanaveena to this podcast. And Jaya, I want to bring you to this podcast now. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, KJ?
I'm doing well, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And I'm sure our audience and the people who will be viewing this would get a great insight through your journey and be able to be inspired with your journey to be where you are at and continue to, help them out through this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I hope so.
Great. Without further ado, let's begin.
Yeah.
So, to begin, let's go back to where it all began from your time at SPA Delhi, where it's a school that emphasizes strongly on architectural fundamentals. But at some point, your path started curving towards something more experimental, more computational. Was there a moment or a project where you realized that you were more drawn towards systems, processes, and logics rather than just form making, which is the conventional way of working within architecture?
Yes, I would say definitely because there was a brief period in my third year where I realized I was attracted to this path more than the conventional way. But to start off, since my early years in undergrad, I was more attracted to curvilinear shape, non-standard, lot of Zaha's work, Frank Gehry's work. And later in my undergrad, I was more attracted to Frey Otto's work, like thinking about material computation and experiments. But I would say the third year was my turning point in my undergrad where I was introduced to Rhino, Grasshopper then, and I felt like I finally had a tool or a workflow methodology which let me realize what I always aspired to design shapes with non-standard, curvilinear, and very, I would say, a bit more crazy structure-wise, all those stuff. Being in SP Delhi, it was not easy that way because your faculties and most of your peers are doing conventional design. You have sort of you're in a ground of people who are doing conventional design. I was always the odd one out. But yeah, that definitely made me be bit more confident or bit more be vocal about the direction I was going in or what I was doing by taking up the tools, parametric tools, or using that to design my aspect forms.
Hmm, interesting. I think, yeah, tools do come handy as a student and as a professional, where every other thing that you do revolves around tool and technologies in today's day and age. And talking about SPA Delhi, which is more of a conventional studios based architectural college, where most of your peers were focusing on conventional studio outcomes, what made you want to explore more experimental or tech forward path? Did it feel like you were taking a risk or did it come naturally to you?
I would say both yes to the both the questions. I was naturally attracted to non-standard forms, but at the same time, it was a big risk coming from SPA Delhi. I was told previously I was more attracted to for any project, initial research, all my reference if I put together it always was something pushing the boundaries, sort of pushing the way things were perceived or how it will be constructed, something or other different. I was doing suspended structures like from different arches. Fourth year stadium was a suspended roof. We were generally me and my friends were doing project where we were naturally attracted to those kind of forms, but it was huge risk because people like faculties in SP really are very experienced in their field. They know they have so much knowledge because they've practiced for so many years. So when I bring something non-standard or something very experimental to them, I always had a lot of questions. And I would say some of the crits were very hard because they question a lot that makes you think that okay, this might not work, I need to rethink something or I might have to change the design. most often I fell into the pit or okay, I need to discard this design. But always somewhat some way or other with help of my friends or like what I was aspiring to, I always stuck to the design, thinking of how can I resolve it. So yeah, I would say a bit of risk. But at the end it was very rewarding because since I stuck to what I wanted to design, I came up with new ways of conveying my design. Either like every crit I would make a collage of what all I want in my project to explain to the faculty, like bringing in structure from these projects or facade from these projects so they would understand. At the same time, made sure I made extra sheets. Like if the submission only need like 10, 12 sheets, I made like extra 5 to explain my concept, explain my working workflow. So it's always like you do a bit of extra work to make sure your faculty is convinced with the level of detail. At the same time, when you're presenting to external juries, it sometimes hits very well with the jury. Sometimes it doesn't hit well with the jury. You're having bit of hard crits even from the external juror. You just need to take it up on your chin and like move forward because I did the best I could with my resources and the time and the knowledge I had. So there will be if you're taking a non-conventional path, there will always be struggles on the way. You just take it up on the chin and go. At the end, where I'm now, I would say it worth the risk I took, and it's been very rewarding now.
Great. I mean, it's fascinating to know. And as you've mentioned, I can relate to it, and it feels almost fascinating to hear how personal instinct start to pull us in a new direction, especially when environment isn't built for it, like most of the conventional architectural colleges and practices. But that boldness to learn into what excites you, that's what often leads to transformation and to new beginnings. Then I would like to extend this conversation towards your postgraduate, then which led you to AADRL, a place that's famously unafraid to break things or the rules. They start to experiment and people start to reinvent design norms. The jump from traditional design, architectural or academic settings in India to radically experimental culture in London must have been really intense. So my question to you is, what were some of those toughest mental models that you had to break down when you moved from SPA to AADRL for your postgraduate studies?
There were, I would say, academically, there were some things which were, I would say, tough or which were completely new for me to take up. In the sense, everything was in a new perspective. Personally, I wanted to be in AA since my, I think, second, third year. I keep on watching DRL's jury, which is streamed online. So I felt like whatever they presented, I was so curious. It was drawing me like the kind of research output they were doing. So personally, I was like, I want to be there. I want to do something crazy there. Like academically, there were a couple of things which were like a bit difficult for me at the start, and I had to pick it up and run with it. Is like how intense people do reading and research here. The kind of architectural historical reading the students are used to here is very big compared to what we are used to in India. And a lot of historical readings here are Western architecture, Western theoreticians who written extensively about architecture. So I had to speed up, read a lot, come up to the same level as my peers. At the same time, the intensity in which people do research here is very different. Like compared to India, where you're researching and submitting what you do, here you get a lot of questions. If you say, okay, this is my start point in my research, my thesis research to the solution, you often get hit with the question, why is this your start point? Or what is your next step? Why is this your next step? So apart from research, you like there's a start point, next step. You also have to supplement it with your experiments, like results from your experiments. So it was a bit hard for me at the initial stage to understand what I'm aiming for, how do I design my experiments and get the results to see how it can help me. But as you go with you're working with your teammates, like couple of months in, you get into the groove of it, you understand, and it was nice. And the peers in my India were they were best designers, so we always talk about a lot of historical reading here and there projects, always talk about that. So you're also learning a lot from your peers in there. So it's a very nice, conducive environment, I would say, if you're like a person who want to go full on research, do crazy stuff, and you want to work with, collaborate with best people. Yeah, DRL is the place. And from the start, with bit of difficulty to end, what we did as a research, what we did as a thesis was a very crazy experience.
Great. I mean, that's good to know that you've moved a step ahead, and it has given you a space where you're not just questioned but challenged to push your limits and be out there to start thinking from ground zero. And which makes me point towards another question, which is, did the AADRL help you see design in a new light? Where any other projects, tools, or critiques that has forced you to rethink your role as a designer, where you come with a already built understanding of architecture from your undergrad and moving to postgrad? Has it shaped you in a certain way?
I would say like did not make me think design in a different way, but it made me like the way I approach designing has definitely changed. Like design for me, what I always gravitate to strive for has been stayed the same, more or less the same since my undergrad. But way I was approaching it, or at the I would say it's become more methodological. Like you start, then you like sort of bringing your references. You sort of like, since I'm now more into fabrication and geometry. As I start, I always have a thinking behind behind my mind that, oh, if is this geometry intelligent enough to be fabricated, or like there are like set of default, let's say, not settings, the default thinking that runs behind my head, like when I start designing, which always sort of gives you a very rounded result, like based on the niche field you are in, based on whatever direction you take, you always have the depth in your thinking or way you design, even though it's the first initial sketch or first initial 3D model you're doing, you have that refinement when you look at things. So that definitely my approach has become well informed and it's become more methodological than I was in like India. But more or less my aspirations have still stayed the same.
Interesting. Well, that kind of academic shift from certainty to speculation, to be able to question from ground zero and to build up, really pushes you to redefine your voice. And sometimes it's not about getting better, but about getting clearer, as what you just mentioned. Great. So, my next question would be along the lines of, what helped you push you through. But I just want to point more towards, now, computational design is having its moment, and but it's still intimidating for many of us, and especially for the viewers who are going to watch this podcast, where it's scripting algorithms or just the understanding of logic behind parametric or computational models. The learning curve is steep. Did you ever face any imposter syndrome while learning new tools or trying to keep up with the peers? What has helped you to push through in those moments where you try to probably rethink and reimagine your approach towards doing things?
I would not say I felt imposter syndrome, but definitely there were like a couple of brief periods where I felt like like entered into something which is very huge for me to learn or like gain knowledge and be like ramp up to the level of my peers, or like especially when I joined DRL or when I joined Zaha Code, like the people around you are very talented in their own way or very experienced in their own way. When I was entering the early stages of each level I took up to, it was very mentally I felt like, oh, this might be harder than I thought.
Mhm.
But there's always like an interesting graph. As you spend your time consistently on whatever you are trying to achieve, there comes a point where the time you spend and the knowledge you learn intersects, and you have enough knowledge, and that gives you a confidence. Okay, I established myself in this level. Now whatever I'm going to learn or experiment, it's just adds, it's like the cherry on top, it's going to keep on adding.
Mm.
So, like, especially fourth year in undergrad, or when I joined DRL the first few months, and when I joined code first couple of months, it was very I was feeling the gravity, like the big things I'm getting into, it's like big. I have so much knowledge gap. I need to like learn to come up to the level. But at the same time, I would say it was a very nice learning, in the sense, if I've not put myself in these situation, I would have not pushed myself to learn. So more than feeling like not like I would not say like not like an imposter syndrome, but it I put myself in these situations so that I know, like, with the peers around, with the time and resource I'm spending, eventually after like couple of months, I would learn or ramp up my knowledge, and then come to a level that I myself like wanted be me to be there. So fourth year, stadium projects which we did, like, definitely gave me a confidence. Okay, now I can use Rhino Grasshopper to design whatever crazy structure or form I want to do. When I came to the first few months, reading a lot of architecture history and like using my tools, like not parametric knowledge I had, combined that, I was like, okay, now I have something new. I something like which defines me. So then when I joined Zaha Code, learning what people there do, and I'll be like, okay, now I know. Now I can like go in depth research on anything fabricatable structure and develop a tool for it. So at each level, I made sure like I learned something new, push myself. Yeah.
Great. Well, you mentioned a lot, and specifically, you mentioned about some of the projects, and which leads me to my next question. Was there a specific breakthrough, maybe a project, a script, or a realization that made you go, okay, yes, I can do this, and apply it onto the real life projects, whether it's within office or your personal project? Was there any such moment that you could share with us that helped you gain that confidence in reality?
Mm, each project I did till now, like I briefly worked in Ant Studio as well. There are like there are a lot of things in computational world where you can like pick up and implement in your project. So after, as I said, each level I leveled up to myself. I would, like, let's say I would like take a project or something comes up academically or in Ant Studio we're doing projects. Once I sort of figure out how to do it, like tool wise, it was always very rewarding, because like you as a designer, you design something and you want a tool to do something specifically for you. The tool development takes a bit of time. Tool or workflow development, anything takes a bit of time, but once you figure out, it's very rewarding. But in the initial stages, when I was struggling, I would always feel, oh, how nice it would be if I had the knowledge to make this work. But once you pass and you get enough knowledge in whatever you're doing and you develop it, it's very rewarding. So, like, a lot of the projects I did in Ant Studio were very rewarding, because by then I had a bit more knowledge on how to use Grasshopper or parametric tools, Rhino, to design very nice forms, and able to support with details using Grasshopper. So that time was very rewarding for me. And in DRL, DRL was completely experiment and research based. So there was time where we had to design our own 3D printer, and this like 3D printing, even though I had my interest, I had my own 3D printer, printing stuff. Designing a 3D printer is a new thing. So our team and we all like sat together, learned a lot about 3D printer, and finally we were able to develop a 3D printer and able to 3D print something. So that was very rewarding for me. Like, we all pushed ourselves into something completely new, and learned whatever we could available online, and we built our own. So it definitely gave me a lot of confidence. Like if I put myself into learning something, I can like learn and like use my knowledge to build something new. So yeah.
Great. Well, you talked about a lot of the projects and what has driven you and what has gotten you, better in terms of your learning and and understanding of the space. Where if someone from the outside, which is not from the computational design domain, looks at it and says it's cold, robotic, where you also mentioned about the 3D printer and purely data driven, but the best work, including yours, and most of the architects who are out there using computational means still carry emotion, intuition, and creative risk, which eventually shapes up the architecture that moves beyond just the tools and computational or any other tech-led, things that allow you to do things. Then my question to you is then how do you make space for spontaneous creative decisions while working within systems, scripts, logical framework, and using computational means to solve for certain problems that occur in a problem in a project, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because when I got introduced to Rhino Grasshopper, it was by Karthik, Vamsi, and Munish, who are like the initial people who did computation design in SPA Delhi. I think in the one of the workshop, I think came across this phrase that it's not the tool who designs, it's you who uses the tool to design. So always like I advise people or the students I teach is like you're the main person, you're the artist who want to do something, and you get access to this sophisticated tool like parametric tools or any computational tool which lets you do a lot of very nice things quickly, but at the end it's always you what you aspire to do. So like I made sure I always stuck with it. Like I want to do something like this. I'll use the tool to maybe speed up my design or make it add details to it. But if a point comes where let's say I don't like what the tool is doing, but I want to intervene, I intervene and model it so it fits what I aspire to do. So that was the main motto I always stuck to. Like you can use tools to just make your own art, but at the end of the day, the tool is not making the art for you.
Right. That's quite an interesting point, and that makes me question another layer to it, which is: have you ever had a moment where the system or the tool didn't deliver you what you envisioned, and you had to override it or creatively reinterpret it? As you mentioned, that tool is not at the forefront; you were at the forefront, and tool is just there to support. What did that teach you about balancing logic with emotion when you had to take certain calls and tools was just there to help you, not to design for you?
It's the answer is definitely like always your design. Like you're taking ownership on what you want to do and what you want to achieve. So not like there are no tools in the world, I would say. Like even though parametric workflows are very extensive, there are no one tool in the world like does everything for you. Like either you start from sketch or you like try to do your first 3D output, it's always like comes from you. Like there won't be a tool like you put in the sketch and like gets you 3D model. Yeah, there are a lot of AI coming up now which lets you take sketch and visualize it, but that itself is a very sophisticated tool. Like what you do a nice sketch, it gives a nice model. If you do a bad sketch, it obviously gives a bad model. Or if you take even detailing anything, like what input you give is what the output it gets. But at the same time, since you're the author of the tool or you're the designer of the tool itself, you can fine tune the parameters. And fine tuning the parameter itself is, I would say, like comes from the designer who you are, what eye designer eye you have, like how good this detail might look or how bad this detail might look. So every I would say step or every interaction, it's your input as well. So I would always advise people to not like hesitate from, okay, this tool is not giving what I want. So like chuck it and like quickly model it. There might come a point where you have enough knowledge maybe to redesign that tool to give outputs you desire, but that this is not the time. Like you should always be like bit level headed in the way like, okay, I don't want you're not developing a tool, you're designing what you want to do. The tool is there to help. But if you sit and develop the tool, like say spend a lot of time developing the tool, the design is not going to happen. You're at the end becoming a tool developer, not a designer.
That's quite interesting. And that balance between structure and spontaneity, where you're using tool as well as your own, decision-making capabilities to lead the design, is such an important reminder that even most technical domains, there is still, in most technical domain, there is still room for human instinct and how it takes over, how the tool is not something that takes over the design, it's the user who uses the tools. Great. So let's take a step back where you walked this incredible path from traditional studio to parametric scripts, from India to UK, and from uncertainty to confidence. If you could ever go back to your final year at SPA Delhi, what would you tell yourself or do differently knowing what you know now? I'm sure this will help a lot of people who will be looking at this video and be able to relate to it because they would want to know this answer as well if they could ever.
Yeah, that's a very nice question. If I go back to fifth year, like if I get chance to meet myself in my fifth year, I would definitely say like it's a very long, big ride coming up. Gear up for it, but I would not change anything from that point to where I am now because a lot of things happened coincidence for me, like meeting people, mentors, peers. There were a lot of coincidence. So those kind of interaction what has made me who I am. Like it's been very holistic experience for me until now. But if I was going to tell me something, I would be like go out and read a lot about architectural history because I when I went fifth year, I feel I was very less informed or I had very less readings under my belt. So I would say like go out, read a lot, and develop. I would say develop your own eye for the design you like, or like develop your own like repository of things you like, from old to new, like which I felt like I developed a lot after coming to London. If I had that before, it would have helped me a lot. So for all the students in India as well, I would say like read a lot about old historical texts, read a lot of philosophical theories, because a lot of philosophical theories what comes into architecture as architectural movements. So I would definitely ask me to like read more and look out, travel more, gain my own eye for designs which I like. Yeah.
Great. That's something interesting that I think most of people would really relate to and be able to take some understanding through it to how to guide yourself. And yeah, I mean that's quite interesting. The question that I would now want to ask you is that what's one misconception that students or early career designers often have about computational design, and what would you say to help them see past it?
Yeah, like I like after teaching couple of students and like even students here in India, I think I have a rough understanding of what early career computational designers go through. And I feel like there are like I would say two opinions, like two advice from me. The first one, I feel like it's a bit of a red flag when I are learning, is like people sit and they want to develop this script, or let's say grasshopper script, which you just give a rectangle input and it gives you everything from that. Being an early stage, like you are a learner there, so I would say like focus on short scripts or short experiments which gives you the output you intend to. At the same time you're learning, down the line like you will be very experienced enough to just give a rectangle and get a very nice building out of it. But when you are learning, that's not the time. Like, expose yourself to various different kinds of algorithms or workflow, and like try to script it on your own. Then you're pushing yourself to use all the commands, use all the logic you have. That was like during COVID, that's what I did. I would like pull up online, okay, this is this sine equation, how do I use that to make this form? So those kind of having short but exercises which give you nice output is what you want at the early stage. Not like I sit and develop this long workflow, like long script which will give you everything. That will not happen at the early stage. That's a big red flag for your development, fast development knowledge. And second thing I would say is, like, there are so much, I would say, like, right now what computational field offers, it's wider, like uh parametric, just parametric workflow, or like jumping models from like interoperability between different softwares, or even in BIM you have like high performance, and like even Grasshopper you have high performance. So when you're starting, this is bit of a wider field now. I would advise people, like, ask question why you want to do this. Like, if
Mhm.
your reason is like I want to design something very nice, then you develop a particular set of, travel to a particular direction, develop a particular set of tool sets and knowledge. If your reason is I want to improve the performance in my building, or like engineer something which adds to sustainability, then the direction which you take is different. But if you don't have a reason to why you're starting this journey, or what you're going to do at the end of it, it will be a bit confusing at the start, because it's like wide open, and it's a lot of niche fields to it now computational wise. You might get lost. So have a clear why or what you want to do as you take up this journey or you take up this tool.
Nice. That's quite interesting the way you shaped it, and which meant to say that you first understand the tool and take the bite that you can churn out in the first go to be able to know the capabilities of the tool, not aim for something magical to come across just because it's a highly capable tool, and where you not just end up using the tool for the sake of it, but question whys and hows and where is it going to lead you will help you shape where to begin and where to end. Otherwise, we'll just drop into the pool of endless possibilities and be confused around that, around that output that you're trying to seek magically, which is quite interesting. And it's good to know your perspective as well, where you've followed this path and this journey, and this should really give insight to people as how they can view this space and not be intimidated by it. Any other general feedback that you would want to give to some early career professionals who would want to pursue computational design and maybe demystify something which is around the domain, that which is a major misconception about this is what computational design domain is, and probably shed some light over there that would guide our users.
For me personally, I would like share like what I started with. For me, it was always using the tool to design non-conventional forms. So I was clear on that. So whatever I did, or whatever, let's say, workshops, lecture I attended, was always optimizing to that, to understand what is new, how can I do it, which also really led me back to a lot of seminal historical experiments, especially Fry Otto. Like, he was doing soap bubble experiments and woolen thread experiments, which I always see that, and I'm like, okay, let me see how I can script this in Grasshopper. Oh, there's Kangaroo plugin I can use, and I do something quickly, and like something resembles to his experiments. I was like, okay, I like this. Like, then the next exercise goes into how can I make a arch, or how can I make some component of building in this. So I always looked out, uh, being very curious. So I would always just what I learned from my experience. I would say the early stage career, like computational designers, to be always curious, like read a lot, because whatever you do always has a historical precedent to it. So as you being curious looking, you go back to the historical precedent, you understand why that a person is doing that, that might resemble to what you want to do, and that brings in a very nice chain of knowledge for you to understand the history of your tool, and all, or also develop the present and think about the future, what it can happen. So I will always say to students or whosoever, like, be curious on what you like, what direction you want to take. And second of all, I would say, like, right now with AI, like, the field has the overall computational design field is having so much updates. Like this, previously 5 6 years back, the updates would be, let's say, 6 months once, 4 months once, something new dropped, new plugin dropped, something new dropped, and you checking out and, oh, it's nice and stuff. But now the things update so fast. So if you're in a field where AI has a lot of impact, or like specialization you're taking as a computational design, I would say be always informed, like have some source of information which you read or how it can impact. And you can also use those tools to improve your workflow. So my second advice to be always be informed or look out for which specialization or direction you're taking.
That's quite interesting. How you can make the best out of this world by having this clarity of what you want to do and where you want to lead yourself. And for that, it's quite crucial to be aware of what is happening, to be update with it, to stay update with it, and that's quite relevant for anything and everything that we do.
Yeah.
Great. Jaya, I would thank you and thank you very much to joining us today. And you've not only just shared your story, but you've also made computational design feel a little more human and a lot more accessible. I'm sure our audience would also relate to it. To everyone listening, if you're on the edge of trying something new, doubting your skills, or wondering if there's a space for you to voice your design, I hope this conversation reminded you that every system needs a spark of intuition, and that should guide you into what you want to do. And the tools and technology are there to support you, not to drive you. And until next time, keep questioning, keep building, and stay curious. Thank you again, Jayanaveena, to joining us within this podcast and be able to guide our users through your journey.
Thank you, KJ. And my last words are always be curious and believe in yourself. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.